Hello everyone, and welcome to Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting series on What If Naruto Awakens 9 Mystical Dragon Seal. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Naruto sighed. He just could believe that he was gone. Never again will he heard those sarcastic comments and the criticism he had grown accustomed to. Did he really mean what he said? Naruto wondered as he looked at the hospital wall. He should be happy. Everybody else in Konoha was. In fact, they were celebrating with right now. Naruto could hear the music and the laugh of every villager at the festival, but he didn't felt like laughing, he felt like mourning. After all, he had given up his life to save him. Flashback: Naruto lay semi-unconscious in the middle of a cave. All the members of Akatsuki were surrounding him and he could feel that one of them was preparing a jutsu. Genryu Q Fusion. The shinobi, who Naruto supposed was the leader, said. Immediately Naruto felt as if the life was been sucked out of him. He could feel like something was detaching from his body. This was the end for him and he knew it. It had all started with a simple mission that ended up being a trap from Akatsuki. The worst part was that he didn't know if Sakura and Sai had made it out okay. He hoped that after capturing him, his teammates hadn't been stupid enough to try to take on Itachi, Kisame, Deidara, and the spiral face guy all by themselves. After some hours Naruto had waken up in this cave, but it was too late to do anything. Naruto felt the end getting closer. The fox was almost out of his body and Shio Basama wasn't here to bring him back. Suddenly the blonde felt something nudging him inside his mind. So, you're just going to give up? A demonic voice said inside the Jinchuriki's mind. Fox. What could you possibly want in a moment like this? Naruto asked. Always the tactless, aren't you, kid? I just wanted to say my goodbyes. Kyuubi responded. You must be so happy that I'm about to die and you'll be going into the possession of a group of people that are almost as sick as you. Naruto thought. The Biju just chuckled at the blonde's thoughts. I never said that you were the one departing to hell today. The fox said as he tried to stop chuckling. What are you talking about? Naruto asked. What can I say? I think that I've grown to stand you in these 15 years we've been together, and it's my decision to give you one last chance to keep on living. Maybe now things will be better for you. The fox said. Naruto couldn't help but notice a hint of sadness in the Biju's voice. What are you implying, fox? The blonde thought. Tactless and clueless, how do you keep the girls away? Kyuubi said mockingly. In just a few moments I'm going to use my chakra to break our bond. This way you'll be able to survive the separation. The fox said. Where would that leave you? Naruto interrupted the demon. Once the separation is complete you will still have some of my chakra. I suggest you use to get the hell out of this place. Kyuubi continued ignoring the blonde. But, what's going to happen to you? Naruto asked again. This time he almost screamed it. I'll be better off dead before I become those bastards' puppet. Kyuubi responded with a saddened tone. The fox continued before Naruto had a chance to protest. Now be ready, I'm going to separate us soon. The fox paused for a moment before continuing. And Kit, I'll miss you. Naruto could practically feel the fox's sad smirk as he felt a tear running down his own cheek. End of flashback. After the separation, Kyuubi used the remaining of his life force to create an explosion that served as distraction for Naruto to escape. The cave had been some sort of maze. Naruto was beginning to think that the Akatsuki was going to find him before he could find the exit. Fortunately Kakashi, Jiraiya, and Yamato had broken into the cave to rescue the blonde, and found him before Akatsuki did. Naruto could hear the music playing back in the village. If it was loud enough to reach all the way to the hospital, that could only meant that it was getting out of control. The blonde sighed again. There was something else beside the departed fox that was troubling the genin. The moment right after the separation, Naruto had felt empty, like there was some sort of void inside of him. But by the time he had passed out from exhaustion, Naruto felt something inside of him, something that was growing with each second. At that time the blonde just shrugged off, believing that it was only his body adapting to not having the fox inside. When Naruto had woken up, a mere hour ago, that something was still there, only it had already become stronger, a lot stronger, and that was frightening the blonde. He thought that by removing the fox that he would get weaker, but it was the opposite. Now he was getting stronger. It was like the Kyuubi was, probably without knowing, blocking something, and now it has a free pass. Naruto was snapped out of his thoughts by the door opening. Naruto watched as a pink-haired girl walked into the room. Sakura was checking the clipboard with Naruto's test results as she walked into his room. Once inside, the girl looked up to find her teammate awake. Sakura's face lighted the moment she saw the blonde's grin. "Sai, he's awake." The girl shouted to the hospital's hallway before going towards Naruto and giving the blonde a friendship hug. "You had us worry, you baka," the girl said as she wiped a tear that had escaped her. "You were worried about me, I'm touch," Naruto teased before he started to chuckle, which earned him a smack on the head. "Sakura-chan, that hurt," the blonde whined. "Well, that's what you get for making fun of me," the kunoichi said. "I'm sorry, Sakura-chan. You know that I didn't mean it," Naruto apologized. The door opened again as a black-haired boy entered the room. "So you finally woke up," Sai said as he walked to the bedside. "It took you long enough, even if you don't have a pay." Sai begun but was interrupted by Naruto. "Don't finish that sentence," Naruto said, frowning at Sai, who in turn just smiled and sat down on a chair next to the bed. The door opened a third time. A silver-haired man accompanied by a black-haired one entered the room. "Kakashi-sensei, Yamato," Naruto exclaimed as the older men walked inside room. "It's nice to see that you're fine, Naruto," Kakashi said. Naruto just grinned and rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm as fine as one can be, all things considered." Naruto looked down at his sheets sadly when he remembered the fox. Kakashi looked up at his ex-student for a couple of seconds. "I think Naruto needs some alone time to think," the Junin said. Sakura was about to protest, but once she saw the seriousness in her ex-sensei's eye, she understood that the matter was indubitable and walked out of the room followed by Sai. Naruto was glad that they had given him some time alone. Once they closed the door, the blonde returned to his thoughts about the fox and the thing that now was taking his place inside of him. 4 days later, Naruto walked around the village. Even after the Kyuubi was gone, the villagers still sent glares towards him. In their mind it was one down and one to go. Naruto had been out of the hospital for only 1 day and he had already heard stories from him and Kyuubi combining, to him killing the fox with his own demonic power. This were the popular gossips among the older generation who knew about him and Kyuubi. The blonde didn't know what to do now. The thing inside him was getting stronger. It was his belief that the thing was trying to take him over, to overwhelm him. The truth was that Naruto was beginning to get scared with whatever that was inside of him now. Unfortunately for the genin, the only person who he could talk to about that was Jiraiya, and it seemed that he got on some women's bad side during the festival and was still at the hospital and he wasn't allowed to receive any visits, Tsunade's orders. It was already late at night, but Naruto wasn't feeling like going to bed, or even eating ramen. He just wanted to clear his head and figure out what was inside of him. Naruto decided to take a walk along the wall of Konoha. It was farther away from the rest of the villager and their gossips. 1 hour later, Naruto was feeling a lot better. There weren't any glares sent in his direction or foul comments about him. The blonde was about to start his way towards his apartment when he felt an unbearable pain in his head. Whatever was inside him had decided to act, and it seemed that it didn't like Naruto very much. The genin leaned against the wall. He was trying to somehow ease the pain in his head. "Naruto-kun, is that you?" Naruto heard a voice coming from his right. The blonde immediately looked towards the direction the voice was coming from. The pain suddenly disappeared. "Shizune-chan," Naruto said as the black-haired woman walked towards him. "Are you alright?" she asked. Naruto nodded his head. "I just tripped, that's all," the genin lied. Shizune looked at Naruto skeptically. "Okay, but if you need anything don't hesitate to ask." She smiled at the blonde. Naruto smiled back at Shizune as she turned and continued on her own way. "Maybe I just need some rest," Naruto said to himself before turning around and starting on his own way. The blonde had been walking for 5 minutes when the pain returned. This time the pain had at least tripled. The ex-Jinchuriki clenched his head in a feeble attempt to ease the pain. Naruto could feel whatever was inside forcing his way out. Naruto started to run. He didn't know where he was headed, he just needed to get away, for the village safety. Before he was aware of it, Naruto was in front of the monumental stone. He could feel as if his head was about to explode at any moment. The boy fell on his knees and closed his eyes. The pain was affecting every part of his body. Suddenly Naruto felt like something overwhelmed. Naruto opened his eyes to see his body covered with a golden aura. Suddenly flashes of an image started to appear in Naruto's mind. It was a girl. She had long purple hair and was dressed in a long white dress. The image appeared and disappeared from his head. Naruto tried to focus on it but was unable to retain it in his mind for more than a few seconds. All of a sudden everything went white and Naruto was unable to say anything else beside whiteness for a few seconds. When Naruto regained his sight he found himself on an unfamiliar place. For the structure of the place he was on some sort of temple. Naruto turned around and saw the purple-haired girl that he saw in those images. Naruto tried to walk up to her but his body wouldn't move. He tried to reach for her but she was too far away. Something about the girl seemed familiar to Naruto, as though he had met her before. He wanted desperately to reach her, to say her name but he couldn't. Suddenly a word started forming inside Naruto's mind. He didn't know what that word was but he had the feeling that it had something to do with the girl. Unconsciously the blonde started saying the word, Ath. Naruto said. For some reason he knew that he was referring to the girl, if he could only finish the word. At the sound of Naruto's voice the girl started to turn. Naruto could see the side of her face but before she could turn completely everything went black. Naruto found himself back at the monumental stone. He looked at himself to say that the golden aura was still there. Suddenly the pain returned but this time it was tenfold. Naruto clenched his head. The pain was too much to bear. Naruto screamed as the golden aura shot into the sky. Genryu Q Fusion, complete 9 mystical dragon seal. A familiar call. Saori was looking up at the sky. She couldn't believe that it had taken them a year to rebuild the sanctuary. She had only been able to go back to Japan a couple of times. Even though she was surrounded by people that care about her, she couldn't help but think that the sanctuary felt empty. The 12 houses had nobody to guard them. The mere thought of their sacrifice saddened the girl. Ath. Saori heard a voice coming from behind. The purple-haired girl turned around. Something about that voice. Sadly the girl couldn't find where it had come from. She started to look around but found nothing. Suddenly Saori started to hear steps. She immediately turned around and saw a brown-haired boy with a red shirt walking up the stairs. Saori-san, there you are. Seiya said as he took the last step. Shun wanted me to tell you that dinner will be ready in about 20 minutes, and that this time you'll have to eat everything, Seiya said with a grin. Saori smiled at the message. After what had happened with Apollo and Artemis, her remaining saints had become a little overprotective with her. Even Ikki will check on her every once in a while. But the two worst cases had been Seiya and Shun. She couldn't remember how many times had she had to stop Seiya from beating Jabu or Ichi because, according to Seiya, they disrespected her. On the other hand Shun had taken a sort of brotherly figure. He was later teased by Seiya because the Pegasus Saint alleged that the reason for Shun overprotectiveness was because the Andromeda Saint was tired of always been the younger brother, and wanted to and try to be someone's older brother for a change. I'll head down, don't worry. Saori responded. This caused Seiya to grin wider. What about Shiryu and Hyoga? Where are they? The girl asked. Hyoga is helping Shun set everything. Seiya begun. Suddenly his face saddened a little. Shiryu is at the statue again. The saint finished. Saori's eyes saddened at the boy's words. Out of all her remaining saints, Shiryu was probably taken the gold saint's sacrifice the hardest. Doko had been a very important figure for the dragon saint, sort like a grandfather. While Shura, though briefly, had taken a place as an older brother. I miss them too, the girl begun. The both were on silence for a few seconds. Suddenly both of them felt an incredible power surge. What is that? Seiya asked looking at every direction trying to find the source. It's incredibly powerful, Seiya said. Saori started shaking. That kind of power wasn't for a saint. It was way too power. It almost felt as though it was from a. Why does it feel so familiar and yet? Saori started to concentrate and figure out where the cosmos came from. Suddenly the power disappeared completely. What was that? Seiya asked still looking around. I don't know, but it was too powerful to be a saint. Saori said worried. She still couldn't shaken up the feeling of familiarity from that cosmos. Saori-san, Seiya. The girl and the saint heard a voice come towards them. The both turned around to see a green-haired boy and a blonde one running towards them. Did you felt that too? Shun asked as they reached the top of the stairs. Of course with did. That cosmos was too powerful to miss. Seiya said as he looked at the sky. It was more powerful than the Angle's cosmos. Hyoga said with seriousness on his face. It felt frightening. Shun said looking down at the floor. Somehow that cosmos reminded him of Hades. All three saints looked at their goddess. Saori had remained silent since the cosmos appeared. Saori-san, what do you think we should do? Seiya asked. The purple-haired girl looked down at the floor. I wasn't able to figure out exactly where the cosmos was from, but I got an idea. I think that we should find the source. That cosmos was too powerful to buy from a normal person. The girl continued. Could you go and get Shiryu? I'll contact the foundation to see if I can find where it came from. Saori finished. The three saints nodded and started their way down the stairs. Saori stayed still for a couple of seconds before she looked at the sky. Who are you? She asked. Why are you calling me? And why does it feel so familiar? Next day. Saori-san, did you found the place? Seiya asked. All four bronze saints were waiting at the lobby. Their goddess had asked them to bring their cloths and be ready for a trip. Yes, I did. It appears that it came from a village that for some reason has connections with the sanctuary. Saori said with a puzzled look on her face. Why do they have connections with the sanctuary? According to the information, they have been involved for 15 years. That was before Xian died. Saori-san, are you okay? Shun asked. The Andromeda Saint's words snapped the girl out of her thoughts. Oh, sorry, I just drifted off. Saori apologized. Like I was saying, I've already got in contact with the village leader, and she has given us her permission to enter. The helicopter will be ready in a few hours, the purple-haired girl explained. But why are we taking our cloths? Hyoga asked. I feel that we'll need them. I'm not sure if that cosmos was hostile, but there's something that urges me to be prepared. The girl responded. All four saints nodded in understanding. Shun. What about Ikki? Shiryu asked the green-haired boy. Shun looked towards the ground. I couldn't find him anywhere. He still have problems socializing, but I doubt he'll do nothing after feeling that cosmos. Shun looked up. His face wore a small smile. And most important, even if he doesn't like to admit it, he's still part of our team. The other three saints and the goddess smiled and nodded in agreement at the Andromeda Saint's words. Konoha. So, why did you come? A blonde woman asked a red-haired teenager. The power surge was felt all the way at Sanagakure. I just have the feeling it'll be him. Gaara responded without a hint of emotion. Tsunade looked at the young Kazekage for a couple of seconds. Do you really care this much for him? The woman asked. He's one of my only friends. I owe him that much. Besides, I know what happened with his Biju, and I found it odd that he was able to emit so much power. The red-haired responded. Now what was that about a foundation asking about him? Gaara asked the Hokage. The Godem sighed before answering. The Grodd Foundation, it seems that it's connected to this place called Sanctuary. That for some reasons have ties with us. Tsunade said. What do you mean, ties, with you? Gaara asked. Now he was really getting curious. Tsunade sighed once again. I went to the hospital to ask Jiraiya about it, but he told me that it was a request for the Yondaime to Sarutobi sensei right before he died during the Kyuubi attack, but I'm sure he knows more than his telling. The woman finished. Gaara stood silence for a couple of seconds before he looked out of the window. I can feel it. Something is coming, something powerful and frightening. The red-haired paused and looked at a picture of Naruto that the Hokage had on her office. Or maybe, it's already here. 7 hours later. Are we there yet? Seiya asked, sitting on the helicopter. No, Hyoga responded. The blonde was sitting next to the brow-haired and had an irritated look on his face. How about now? The Pegasus Saint asked. No, the blonde responded. And now? Seiya asked. No, the Cygnus Saint responded. Seiya stood silence for about 5 seconds before turning to the blonde. Are we there yet? The brow-haired boy asked. Hyoga clenched his fist before turning to Saori. Are you sure you won't rethink about the "don't freeze Seiya in mid-flight" rule? The blonde asked. The purple-haired girl giggled slightly. Seiya, we would get there in a few minutes, so please stop bothering Hyoga, or I will change the rule. Saori said. Seiya folded his arms and muttered something about only wanting to know how long it would take them to get there. The other three saints broke into a fit of laughter. Somewhere in Fire Country, are you sure you want to go there? A blue-skinned man asked. Yes, I'm completely sure that power surge came for Konoha, a raven-haired man answered. But what can it be? The Kyuubi is dead. There shouldn't be anything that powerful there, Kisame said. That's what I want to find out, called nostalgia or curiosity. Either way I'll go to Konoha, Itachi said as they started on his way. At least don't get yourself killed, alright? Kisame called. The Uchiha waved his hand as a sign of acknowledgement. Konoha Naruto woke up in a hospital room once again. For a few seconds the blonde thought that everything had been a dream, that in any moment he would hear the fox making fun of him for fainting. Sadly, it hadn't been a dream. He couldn't sense the demon anymore, but he could sense the other thing, and it was way stronger than before. The genin tried to recall what had happened, but he could only remember the pain on his head, the gold aura surrounding his body, and the girl. Why was it that he felt he had seen her before? And that word that he was unable to finish, what could have been? Naruto? The blonde heard someone said from the door. The ex-Jinchuriki turned around to find his former sensei at the door. Are you okay? Kakashi asked. The Junin waited a few seconds until the blonde spoke. What happened? Naruto asked. Kakashi sighed before he answered. Last night, I sensed an incredible power surge coming from the monumental stone. When I looked outside I saw this giant pillar of golden light. By the time I got there the light had vanished, and you were laying there unconscious. Kakashi watched the boy gaze down at his sheets. What happened last night? The silver-haired man asked. Now it was Naruto's turn to sigh. He wanted to talk to Jiraiya first, but Kakashi would have to do. After what happened with Kyuubi, Naruto began. I started to feel something different inside of me. At first I didn't give it too much thought, but now, I feel as though it's about to take over. The genin said without shifting his gaze from his sheets. Tsunade watched as the helicopter landed. Next to her stood Gaara and Shizune. The helicopter's doors opened and a purple-haired girl stepped out. Tsunade couldn't shake off the feeling that the girl gave her. It was a feeling of an incredible power that she had only felt on Naruto. You must be Saori-san. My name is Tsunade. I'm the village leader. The blonde woman presented herself. Saori bowed slightly. It's nice to meet you, Tsunade-sama. These are my friends Seiya, Hyoga, Shun, and Shiryu. The girl said as each one of her saints stepped out of the helicopter. Tsunade nodded. This is my assistants, Shizune. Tsunade said, gesturing towards the black-haired woman to her said. And this is Gaara, he's the leader of an ally village. The Hokage said, gesturing to the red-haired who just nodded. I believe you already know what we came for, Saori said. Tsunade nodded before speaking. Yes, I know, but before I show you to him I would like to know more about all of this. Tsunade said. Now it was Saori's turn to nod. And I would like to inform you all about it. The purple-haired began. But it would be better if we speak privately. Tsunade nodded once again. Shizune, would you please take Saori-san's companions and show them around? The Hokage said. I'll do it. Gaara offered. Tsunade nodded before she led Saori towards the Hokage tower. 1 hour later. You don't seem too surprised, Saori said after she had told everything to the Hokage. When you live a life like mine, few things surprise you. Tsunade said. Besides, I found some files from my sensei, the previous Hokage, that talk about something like this. The blonde said. Tsunade-sama, may I ask you, what are the ties between this village and the sanctuary? The purple-haired girl asked. I don't really know. It was something that the previous Hokage did, and I was ignorant to it until yesterday. Tsunade said before. The goddess nodded in understanding. Well, I think it's time you meet him. The Godem began. I received word that he already woke up. We'll just wait until Gaara gets back with your companions and I'll take you there. Tsunade said, smiling at the girl. Naruto was sitting on his bed. He was feeling better that when he woke up. Neji and Sai had come to visit him. So you fainted again? Sai said. Well, what can you expect from somebody who doesn't have a pay? Sai began but was cut by Naruto once again. What did I tell you about those jokes? The blonde said, frowning at his teammate. This caused the two black-haired nin to start laughing. Suddenly the door opened and Tsunade entered the room. Obasan, Naruto exclaimed. This made the Hokage boil in anger, but she forced herself to calm down. Naruto, there's someone I would like you to meet. She might know something about what happened to you, the blonde woman said. Tsunade went to the hallway. After a couple of seconds the blonde came back. She was followed by a purple-haired girl in a white dress. Naruto and Saori stood in silence, each one looking at each other's eyes. That's the girl, the one that was at that temple, Naruto thought. He had unconsciously moved to the bed's edge. Why'd I feel like I know him? Saori thought. She could feel the strange cosmos coming from the blonde. He seems so familiar, why do I feel like this? Hi, Naruto decided to break the silence. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. The boy said, grinning. Saori was snapped out of her thoughts by the blonde's word. Hi. My name is Saori, Kido Saori. The purple-haired girl said, bowing slightly. They stayed in silence once again. This time Tsunade decided to break the silence. Maybe you two should get out. You probably have a lot to talk about. The Hokage said. The blonde woman smiled as the blonde boy and the purple-haired girl snapped out of their trance, blushing. 20 minutes later, Naruto and Saori had been walking for a few minuets in complete silence. The both felt as though they had already met, but they couldn't explain what. Naruto led the girl to a stream at the outskirts of the village. It was a nice place to just hang out and relax. Why do I feel like this? Naruto asked. What do you mean? Saori asked Event, though she was about to ask the same thing. Why do I feel like I know you from somewhere? Naruto said. The girl stood in silence for a couple of seconds. I don't know, but I feel the same way. She responded. Naruto sat down next to the girl and looked towards the stream. Tsunade-Basen probably told you, but I had a demon sealed inside of me for all my life. Naruto began. Then, even though we never got along, he sacrificed his life to save me. And now I feel like something else inside of me is trying to overwhelm me. Naruto explained. The blonde stood quiet for a moment before he continued. I'm scared. Even the times when I lost myself in Kyuubi's powers, I never felt like this. Naruto was startled when he felt a hand on his shoulder. I may not know what's inside of you, but maybe I can help. Saori said. Naruto nodded. Thanks, Saori-chan. The blonde said. Saori blushed slightly at the blonde's words. Okay, first close your eyes and try to concentrate your energy. The girl said. Naruto did as he was told. The blonde closed his eyes and started to concentrate. After a couple of seconds he could feel the same sensation he felt the night prior, only without the pain. Saori closed her eyes and focused her cosmos on Naruto. After a moment she found herself in a strange place. It was all covered in mist and she couldn't see very much. The girl started to walk into the mist. After a couple of minuets she saw a figure standing not far away. When the girl got close, Saori realized that it was Naruto. She walked until she was right behind him. Saori put her hand on his shoulder. The blonde turned towards the purple-haired girl. Saori nearly gasped when she saw the blonde's eyes. Naruto's eyes had changed from blue to orange. Seiya, Shun, Hyoga, and Shiryu were talking with Gaara, Neji and Sai. They were at a restaurant waiting for their food, when suddenly all 17 felt a huge power surge coming from the outskirts of the village. Saori felt something push her and she found herself back at the stream. Naruto standing, his body was covered in a golden aura and he was clenching his head. Saori-chan, it's not safe for why you here. I can feel it, it's about to free it itself. The blonde said, clenching his head in pain. The girl stood frozen. Naruto's cosmos was way stronger than the last time. It rivaled those of Hades and Apollo, and it was still growing. Saori-san, Seiya screamed. The purple-haired girl turned around to see her 4 bronze saints coming towards them. They had their cloths on their back. They were followed by Gaara, and the 2 boys Saori had seen in Naruto's hospital room. What's happening? Seiya asked as they reached the purple-haired girl. Please, you need to get away. I can't hold it be back much longer. Naruto managed to say through the pain. Naruto? Saori said as she tried to get closer to the blonde. Saori-chan, please. I won't be able to hold it back any. The genin stopped as his eyes widened. Naruto screamed as his body was completely covered by a golden light. The aura that around the blonde shot to the sky. Ah! Shiryu said as the power from the light pushed him, alone with the other, back. The light started to weaken until it reverted back to the golden aura. The light had created a crater where Naruto stood. The blonde had his eyes closed and was looking at the floor. Naruto? Saori whispered. The blonde opened his eyes and looked up. Everyone gasped when they looked into the blonde's eyes. The sapphire orbs were missing, and were replaced by a fierce orange color. The Naruto smirked as the golden aura swirled around his body. It's nice to see you again. The blonde said, looking straight at Saori. His voice was different, and his body radiated a powerful cosmos. "Sister," finished the blonde. Saori gasped. She could recognize Naruto's cosmos now, but she just could not believe who he was. "Aries," the girl whispered. Saori gasped. She could recognize Naruto's cosmos now, but she just could not believe who he was. "Aries," the girl whispered. The blonde started to chuckle, but it quickly became an all-out laugh. "That's the welcome you give your older brother, Athena," the teen said as he stepped out of the craters. His mere presence was terrifying. The dust seemed to move away from him. The glint in his eyes sent shiver to both the saints and the shinobis there present. The smirk on his face just foretold about disasters that have yet, but will certainly, come. The goddess stood frozen in her place. "How can it be?" she thought. "Aries," the purple-haired girl repeated. It seemed to be the only word she could utter at the moment. The blonde laughed again, his cosmos still swirling around him. "I didn't know you had become so weak after all this time," Aries commented. His voice had a faint hint of malice, but his cosmos didn't hide anything about his true intentions. The blonde stepped forward. Athena moved backwards at her brother's advance. Seiya, recognizing the fear on the goddess' eyes, placed himself between Aries and the girl. "I won't let you do anything to Saori-san," the young saint said with determination on his eyes. The blonde merely chuckled at the boy's remark as he raised his right arm. Aries looked straight into Seiya's eyes as an evil smirk formed on the god's face. Aries closed his hand into a fist. Immediately the Pegasus Saint was thrown back as thought he had been punched on the face. "Seiya!" Athena exclaimed as she made to move towards he saint. Immediately the blonde spiked his cosmos, making the girl stop on her track. "Naruto, what are you doing?" Neji asked. His Byakugan was activated, but he couldn't believe what he was seeing. There was something wrong with his friend Shikara pathway. He could see a Shikara-like energy on Naruto's body. The only differences were that this one didn't have any restraints, and it felt more powerful. The blonde looked at the Hyuga and smirked once again. "My weaker half is not in charge of this body anymore," the god of war responded. "What are you talking about?" Sai asked. He was worried about Naruto. He was the closest thing to a brother he now had. To both Neji's and Sai's surprise, it was Gaara who answered. "This isn't Naruto anymore, but Aries, the god of war," the red-haired said. "If what I heard is right, some of the gods reincarnate inside a human's body every so often," the Kazekage added. Aries simply smirked at the ex-Jinchuriki's words. "I didn't know you were so well informed, Gaara," the blonde said before his gaze shifted towards the girl ahead of him. "Are you still on shock, sister?" Aries asked with mock concern. Athena gathered all the courage she could muster in the presence of her brother. "Aries, what did you do to Naruto?" the goddess asked, trying to remain calm. The incarnation of war merely chuckled at his sister question. "Like I said, my weaker half is no in control of this body anymore. He's trapped by my cosmos, giving me completely control," Aries responded as he spiked his cosmos, making the girl move backwards. "Are you afraid of me, little sister?" the blonde asked. Once again his voice was full of mock concern. After taking a couple of steps, Aries stopped abruptly and tilted his head backwards. The next second a small ball of energy passed in front of the god of war. Aries turned to face Seiya, who was once again on his feet, and with his right arm extended. "I told you, I won't let you harm Saori-san," the brown-haired boy said. A faint trail of blood ran down his mouth. The blonde extended his own right arm in the Pegasus Saint's direction and closed his hand into a fist. Seiya moved out of the way the moment he saw Aries' arm move. Suddenly the boy felt an intense pain in his stomach and was thrown back. "Seiya!" Shun exclaimed as he rushed to his friend's side along with Shiryu and Hyuga. "What happened?" the Cygnus Saint asked when they reached Seiya. "I don't know, it just felt like some sort of pressure," the brown-haired boy said, trying to get up. "Because that's exactly what it is," Shiryu said, looking straight at Aries. "He uses his cosmos and the air released from the movement of his hand closing into a fist to create pressure in any part of his opponent's body. If allowed to continue for long, this can cause severe internal damage," the long-haired teen explained. Aries' chuckles could be heard once again. "Well, aren't you the perceptive one?" the blonde commented, looking at the Dragon Saint. In one swift movement Aries' arm was extended up front and his hand was, once again, closed into a fist. Immediately all four bronze saints were thrown back as they felt the pressure on several parts of their bodies. "Stop it," Athena exclaimed, taken back by her own audacity. Aries turned around with a look of amusement in his eyes as he faced his sister. "Well, look who decided to join." The god of war commented. "So, have you found your backbone yet, dear sister?" The blonde mocked as he started to advance towards the girl. Suddenly a blinding light came from the direction Aries had been facing just moments ago. The god of war turned around once again and looked with amusement how the Pegasus, Andromeda, Cygnus, and dragon cloths were released from their containers and shone with a heavenly light. Gara, Neji, and Sai watched in awe as each cloths went to its respective master. A.N. These are the third forms of the bronze cloths, the ones that were created with Athena's blood. None of them have their headwear. They are like how they appeared during Overture, except the Shiryu's and Hyoga's cloths aren't destroyed, obviously. Like Seiya said, Shiryu started. "We're not going to let you," Shun added. "Hurt our goddess." Hyoga said. "No matter what we have to do, we will always protect Saori-san," Seiya said. All four bronze saints stood with their cloths radiating a luminous light. "Because we are Athena's saints," the four of them exclaimed in unison. Aries' only response was a smirk as he gave the four teens his full attention. The first one to attack was Seiya. As he launched himself against the god of war, all of his punches were dodged with ease by Aries. Suddenly Seiya moved out of the way, letting Hyoga to come into view. "Aurora Thunder Attack," the Cygnus Saint said before a blizzard-like attack went straight towards Aries. The god of war dodged the other blonde's attack easily, but a green blur appeared next to him. Excalibur. Shiryu swung his right arm. Aries dodged the attack made of compacted cosmos just to hear Nebula Chain and be surrounded by the Andromeda Saint's weapon. Using his supreme speed, Aries prevented being trapped in the Nebula Chain, but immediately he found himself, once again, face to face with the Pegasus Saint. "Pegasus Ryusei Ken," Seiya said before a barge of energy spheres went flying towards the god of war. All the spheres were hitting their target. Seiya continued the attack as the energy ball raised dust and covered the blonde, Shiryu, and the others landed next to the Pegasus Saint and waited. Once the dust settled, the four bronze saint gasped slightly at the sight. Not a single scratch was on the god of war's body, only a smirk was on the blonde's face. "Is this all that you can muster?" Aries mocked. "It didn't work," Shun said as he watched Aries smirk. "It's like nothing happened." A dumbfounded Seiya said. The four bronze saints started to concentrate their cosmos once again. "We need to attack now, while he's overconfident," Shiryu said, and the other saints nodded. Excalibur, Nebula Chain, Aurora Thunder Attack, Pegasus Ryusei Ken. All four attacks went straight towards Aries, emitting a blinding light. "Phalanx Shield," the god of war said softly. Immediately his golden aura started to shine and thousands of blasts were shot straight towards Seiya and the other, throwing back the bronzed saints. "How does it feel to be attacked by your own cosmos?" Aries mocked. Groans were his only answer as the Hyoga, Shiryu, Shun, and Seiya struggled to stand up. "His attack, it absorbed our cosmos and threw them against us," the dragon saint said. The blonde merely chuckled. "Well, almost." The god of war began. "My shield takes the energy from incoming attacks, combines it with my cosmos, and shoots it back. Think about like 95 your power and 5 of mine," Aries explained. "So, you can launch an incredibly powerful attack, while wasting only an insignificant amount of cosmos," Hyoga said as he sustained his body with his hands on his knees. Aries nodded as he continued to chuckle. "What are we going to do now?" Shun asked, failing to hide his concern. "We need to find a way to break through his shield," Shiryu responded. "Like hell we are," Seiya exclaimed. "I'm going to defeat him with my cosmos head on," the Pegasus Saint said before starting to concentrate his cosmos. Pegasus Ryusei Ken. Thousands of energy spheres were shot towards Aries. The blonde just stood there immobile as every single attack crashed with his cosmos. "Damn it, Seiya," Shiryu said as he pushed the Pegasus Saint away. The next second thousands of blasts destroy the spot where the brown-haired boy previously stood. "We need to plan a strategy if we're going to have a chance against him," the Dragon Saint said. "Who said that you stand a chance against me?" Aries mocked as he walked towards the bronze saints and extended his arm to the side, Immediately a spear materialized on his right hand. When you haven't seen even a fraction of my power. The blonde finished as his cosmos glow intensified. Shiryu was the first to step up. Rasen Ryu Haisho, the long-haired teen exclaimed as he propelled his fist forward. Immediately the figure of a green dragon was shot straight to Aries. The god of war merely swiped his spear, sending a shockwave that cut through the dragon and sent Shiryu flying. Nebula chain was heard as soon as the dragon saint's feet left the ground. The circle chain wrapped itself on Shiryu's waist, preventing him from being thrown too far back. The triangle chain went flying straight towards Aries. The blonde simply placed his spear up front and tangled the chain with it. Aries moved his right arm back, taking the spear, the chain, and shun with it. Ah! The green-haired boy screamed as he went flying past the god of war. Aries swiped his arm forward, propelling the Andromeda Saint towards Hyuga. The force was enough to send both teens flying back. The Cygnus Saint was able to protect Shun from the fall. Hyuga set his friend on the floor before standing up. This is bad. The blonde saint thought. He doesn't only have an extremely powerful cosmos, an incredible defense, but his physical strength is unbelievable. Hyuga started to gather his cosmos. Seiya, attack the moment right after I do. The Cygnus Saint told his friend. The brown-haired boy nodded. Aurora Thunder attack. Hyuga clasped both of his hands and shot them forward. Instantly a blizzard-like attack was once again shot in direction of Aries. The god of war swiped his spear once again, dispersing the cloud air and sending the other blonde flying back. Immediately Aries noticed a shadow in the sky. The blonde looked up to find the Pegasus Saint with his fist ready to attack. Pegasus Ryusei Ken. Seiya screamed, shooting his fist down. A barrage of energy sphere was sent crashing down towards Aries. Seiya continued attacking as he descended. When the Pegasus Saint was about to reach the god of war, the brown-haired boy felt a pain on his stomach. Seiya looked down to see that the end of the spear had connected with his abdomen. Phalanx shield. Seiya heard the words been spoken softly before his body was hit by thousands of blasts, sending the boy flying into the air before hitting the ground hard. Aries impaled the spear on the ground before walking towards Seiya. I expected so much more from my sister's saints. The blonde mocked as he grabbed Seiya with his right hand and raised him so that the Pegasus Saint's feet weren't touching the ground. Is this supposed to be the power that defeated the gods? Aries continued. How could a sad excuse for saints, like the four of you, defeat Poseidon, Hades, and Apollo? The god of war looked with amusement as the brown-haired boy tried to release himself from his hold. Tell me, Seiya, do you hate me? Aries asked. Seiya looked straight at the blonde's eye with determination on his own, but he did not answer. You can't answer me, Aries said in an amused tone. Let me help you make up your mind. The god of war said as he tightened his hold on the Pegasus Saint's neck and his cosmos swirled furiously around him. 15 years ago, the day Naruto was born and I was reincarnated inside his body. Aries began. A demon attacked this village. Its leader decided to use this body a vessel to contain the demon. At that time my power were those of a newborn, because that's what I was, and I was thrown deep inside Naruto. There was no way for me to control this body, and for a year I just watched the days pass, but at the same time my power returned to me. The demon prevented me from taking control of the body, but I found another outlet. Aries smirked evilly before continuing. My telepathic abilities took my mind to Greece, and I found the most interesting thing in my sister's sanctuary. One of her saints, one of the most powerful I might add, had doubts where his loyalty lay. I took advantage of that and took control of him. Seiya watched with horror-stricken eyes as the god of war continued. I was the one who turned Gemini Saga into Aries. Seiya found himself unable to speak after hearing what the blonde had revealed. Since the Pegasus Saint remained quiet, Aries decided to continue. I have to admit, Kanan helped me a lot. He planted the darkness inside his brother, but everything Saga did was because of me. The god of war said with malice on his voice. You could say that I was responsible for everything you and the other bronze saints went through in the sanctuary. You could also say I was responsible for Xian's and Aeolus' deaths, and ultimately Death Mask's, Shira's, Camus, Aphrodite's, and Saga's deaths. Immediately Aries felt 4 cosmos increase greatly. One was coming from the boy on his right hand, and the other 3 were in front of him. Nebula stream. A hateful voice said. Instantly the blonde was trapped on a current-like cosmos flow. Aries looked past Seiya to find the other three bronze saints looking at him. Their eyes show a mixture of rage and hatred. The god of war looked up to find Seiya's eyes with the same fury as the other three. The bronze saint Cosmos burned with an immense power. The pink, green, and white cloths turned into a blinding gold color. "We're going to make you pay." Seiya growled as he grabbed Aries' forearm with his left hand and drew back his left fist. "We're going to make you pay for what you've done." Aurora Execution, Nebula Storm, Rasen Hyaku Ryu Ha, Pegasus Sui Sei Ken. There was a huge explosion after all four attacks landed on Aries. Phalanx Shield was heard right before a golden explosion erupted form within the blinding light created by the Bronze Saint's attack. The four saints were thrown into the air. Their cloths reverted back to their original colors and landed in front of Aries. The god of war was about to move towards Seiya and the other, when suddenly two lion-like figures attacked him. The blonde merely swiped his hand and brushed the lions away. Immediately, sand erupted from the ground and imprisoned Aries. A.N. Gaara does not have Shukuka inside of him. This is said after Akatsuki captures it, but Gaara can still control the sand. Seconds later the sand prison exploded and the god of war stood there unharmed. Hake Kusho. Aries' head before a strong wind current went crashing down on him. The most that the attack did was mess his spiky hair even more. Aries' gaze traveled past the saint agonizing in the floor to the three nins standing beyond them. "My bad, I got too caught up in the moment and totally forgot about you." The god of war mocked. Gaara, Sai, and Neji got into fighting stance once they got the blonde's full attention on them. "Phalanx Shield," Aries said, and immediately thousands of blasts were shot towards the shinobis, throwing both saint and nins back. You. Aries said that his defense absorbed energy. This includes Cosmos and Chakra, but there's a difference between the two. The blonde walked towards the group of teenagers. "After 15 years of inability, I expected a far greater challenge." The god of war mocked. Aries extended his right arm forward, in direction of Seiya and the others. "Naruto might have been a pathetic excuse for a warrior," the blonde said. "But he did accomplish something right." Aries finished as his cosmos started to gather and swirl on the palm of his hand, until it formed a golden sphere. Neji looked up with high Byakugan in fear. He immediately recognized Naruto's trademark, but this time it was different. Just like Aries' aura, the sphere in the god of war's hand was in a completely different level. There was nothing restraining it as it swirled freely in its master's hand. Rasengan. A devastating tornado-like blast shot out of Aries' right hand, sending the 7 teenagers flying even farther back and destroying in their surroundings. Aries walked towards the Seiya and the others. His right arm was still extended. "I sincerely expected more of you. 2 top leaf nins, the Cage, and my sister's favorite saints." The god of war mocked. Aries started to gather cosmos on his hand once again. "Goodbye shinobis, goodbye bronze saints," the god of war said before thrusting his arm forwards. Shun closed his eyes and waited for the attack. He knew that he wouldn't be able to survive it once again, but the attack never came. The Andromeda Saint opened his to find Aries standing before him. The blonde's body was trembling. His left hand had a hold on his left arm. "Damn, it seems that my weaker half still have some control over this body," Aries said as his orange eyes flashed blue for a second. The god of war's cosmos spiked as he forced his arm back, the sphere of cosmos forming once again on his hand. Aries pushed his arm forward once again. This time Aries stopped abruptly. There was no shaking on the blonde's body, just a look of amusement in his eyes as he lowered his right arm. Athena stood between her brother and the 7 teenagers on the floor. The girl had a look of sheer determination on her eyes as she looked at her brother's fierce orange ones. "Aries, stop this," the purple-haired girl said, not a hint of fear on her voice. Aries stared at his sister's face before starting to chuckle. "Sister, don't tell me," the god of war began. "Don't tell me that you're planning to fight me." Aries finished as his cosmos spiked to an incredible high. Pegasus Ryu Sei Ken. Pegasus Meteor Fist Rasen Ryu Hai Sho. Rasen's Flying Dragon. Rasen Hyaku Ryu Ha. Rasen's 100 Rising Dragons. Pegasus Sui Sei Ken. Pegasus Comet Fist. Aries Rasengan. Just like Naruto's except that it's made out of cosmos, not chakra, and as a range attack, it is shot out of one's hand instead of been impaled on the opponent. Aries stared at his sister's face before starting to chuckle. Sister, don't tell me. The god of war began. Don't tell me that you're planning to fight me. Aries finished as his cosmos spiked to an incredible high. The girl flinched inwardly at her brother's power, but in the outside she stood unmoved at the god of war's demonstration. Aries' chuckles turned into a laugh. What's with this act, dear sister? Aries mocked. You know that you can't hide your fear from me, the blonde said as he stepped forward. Saori-san, don't. Seiya said weakly as he tried to stand up. We'll protect you. We promised that we would defeat him, the Pegasus Saint said while continuing to struggle. No, Seiya. There's no way you'll be able to defeat Aries in that state. He's not like any opponent you've ever faced. The goddess began. It was always said that Aries and me were the most gifted of Father's children. While I received Father's shield, his wisdom, Aries received his spear, Zeus' power, the purple-haired girl explained. Aries merely smirked at the goddess' words. Not even Hades or Apollo has been able to match him on the battlefield. Saori added as she closed her eyes. She knew that this was a terrible truth and that it will be hard for Seiya and the others to accept. Aries, the girls started again. My brother, it's the true prince of Olympus. Athena stood quiet after those words, hoping that her saints and the others will understand the situation, and why they would not stand a chance if they interfere. After a couple of minutes of silence, the blonde sighed. I think we should end this, Aries said as he raised his right arm and a sphere of golden cosmos started to gather in his palm. Farewell, sister. See you in the next life, the god of war said. Athena gathered her cosmos. She wasn't sure if she could block her brother's attack at this distance, but for the sake of Seiya and the others, she had to try. Suddenly flames appeared between the two gods, blocking Ares' path as a terribly powerful presence let itself known. The god of war smirked as he watched flames as dark as the night swirl in front of him and two crimson orbs appear inside the fire. From the blazes a dark figure formed. I picked. A voice came from the black fire. A great day to come back home. The flames dispersed and revealed a young man with black hair and wearing a black cloth with red cloud patterns. His eyes were crimson and had a weird wheel-like symbol in them. Uchiha Itachi, Sai said from the ground as he too struggled to stand up. Itachi ignored the group behind him and focused on the blonde. Why doesn't it surprise me that the outburst of power I felt had something to do with you, Naruto-kun? Aries chuckled. You should know by now that my weaker half is not in charge of this body anymore. I could feel your presence for some time now. Now it was the time for Itachi to chuckle. I am talking to Naruto-kun, because I heard and saw everything from the beginning. I know that Naruto-kun is still in there and that you don't have complete control over that body, the Uchiha commented. Aries merely shrugged the comment off. It's not like my weaker half can do anything at this point of time, the god of war commented, not giving the Uchiha's words too much importance. Naruto-kun might not be able to do anything at this moment, Itachi said as he removed a few strands of his hair from his face. But I can, Amaterasu, the Uchiha unexpectedly said right before the god of war's body was completely engulfed in flames. Even the black flames of Amaterasu, that were said to burn for days, started to extinguish by simply coming into contact with the god's body. Before the flames that were currently obscuring his vision disappeared, Aries moved his head to the left right before an arm with a kunai in hand appeared where his head had been less than a second ago. That's pretty bold of you, the blonde started. To come in such proximity of me, the god of war said as he looked at the Uchiha in front of him. The glint in the black-haired man's eyes bothered the blonde. Suddenly, Aries' eyes widened just before Itachi's body exploded. As a god you should know that one must never trust what he sees, Itachi said mockingly, appearing at a safe distance as he watched the cloud of smoke created by the explosion. Suddenly, Aries' spear went flying through the cloud of smoke and impaled the Uchiha on his chest. Itachi fell on his knees as blood started to sprout from. The blonde walked towards the fallen shinobi. That was quite a trick, Itachi, the god of war started. But it's not enough, Aries said as he placed his hand on his spear. Then, the blonde became aware of the glint in the black-haired man's Sharingan once again before the body exploded. The same trick twice? Aries asked. It works quite nicely, Itachi responded as he appeared behind the blonde with a kunai next to the god of war's neck. Aries merely smirked as he turned his spear with one swift move, impaling Itachi before the Uchiha had a chance to move. For the third time, the blonde saw the Nukanons shun with an ominous light. Another explosive bunchen? The god of war wondered as he expected the clone to blow up into another cloud of smoke. Aries was surprised when the bunchen merely turned into water and fell on the floor. A water clone, Aries said to himself as he wondered what the Uchiha was planning. Suiru no Jutsu was heard from the distance as the water around Aries trapped the blonde on a sphere. I was wondering if that trick would be enough for a god, Itachi said as he appeared in front of the god of war. The Uchiha's face was alight with amusement and confidence. Aries merely chuckled. I have to hand it to you, Itachi. The blonde began. I never expected you to use this type of strategies, but still, the god of war's body started to glow. It's not enough. Phalanx shield. The water prison burst as many energy blasts went flying straight towards the Uchiha. Itachi jumped to prevent being hit by the god of war's counterattack. When he finally landed, the Uchiha realized that the blonde had completely disappeared from his field of vision. Where did he go? Itachi thought as he searched for the god of war. Remember one thing, Itachi, Aries said from behind the Uchiha. The blonde appeared back to back with the black-haired man. You're fighting against a god. Aries finished by increasing his cosmos to add to the meaning of the message. The Uchiha's eyes widened as he realized where his opponent was. Immediately, Itachi moved quickly to get away from the god of war. So this is what it's like to fight a god, the Nukanon said once he was at a safe distance from the blonde. The total feeling of inferiority, the extreme sense of helplessness. Those feelings seem so foreign to me now. I can't remember the last time I got acquainted with them, Itachi commented. Saori clenched her heart as she watched the black-haired shinobi fight her brother. Aries is only playing with us, the girl thought. Ever since the beginning he has only been in the defensive, but now, he's starting to reveal his true power, yet it's merely a fraction of it he's revealing. Athena didn't know how much more of this she could take. The last time she had felt so much dread was when Seiya was dying in her arms after being impaled by Hades' sword, but this time, she could do nothing about it, nothing at all. My chakra is running low, Itachi thought as he watched the confident smirk in the blonde's face. I probably only have enough for one last attack. Let's make it worthy of the god of war. A smirk broke through the Uchiha's frozen mask as he started to gather his remaining chakra. Aries watched as the Nukanon made another series of bushins and they all charged towards him. The god of war chuckled at the similarity between this attack and Naruto's usual strategy. The blonde was about to swing his arm to wipe all the clones out when every last one of them exploded, causing a large cloud of smoke and dust to cover the whole battlefield. Come on, Itachi, this has got to be the oldest trick in the book, Aries commented as he tilted his head slightly to right. Immediately, Itachi's fist went flying from behind the blonde right through where his head had been less than ago. Aries grabbed a hold of the Uchiha's wrist and turned him around. Just when the Nukanon's face came into the god of war's view, Aries realized that the explosive bushin and this attack had been nothing but facades. Gukakyu no Jutsu. The god of war's eyes widened slightly as a streak of flames went flying straight towards him. Itachi's fireball was strong enough to cause an explosion right where the blonde stood, yet the Uchiha's attack was still unfinished as a second fireball combined with the existing flames, sending more smoke and dust into the air. Athena watched with amazement as a third and fourth impacts were heard. Could it be that an explosion indicated the fifth impact? This person, the sixth and seventh explosions occurred. Is actually able, the eighth and ninth blasts raised a bigger cloud of smoke. To stand up against the gods, the 10th explosion vibrated throughout the battlefield. Out of the cloud of smoke, the burned figure of Itachi appeared. The Uchiha was panting as streaks of blood ran from his arm and the corner of his mouth. The Nukanon's body was seriously burned, the price to pay for carrying out that type of attack, but even with the immense pain on his body, Itachi's gaze stayed fixed on the cloud of smoke in front of him. Suddenly, Aries' figure appeared right next to Itachi. That was quite a trick, the god of war taunted. His cloths were only mildly singed, unlike the Uchiha's cloak that was almost completely destroyed. Itachi's eyes widened in terror as the god of war stood next to him, facing the opposite direction, but completely unharmed. I was sure that I would have been able to do at least some type of damage to him, the Uchiha thought as acceptance started to form in his mind. Yet, I wasn't even able to reach him. Sadly, your strategy wasn't enough, Aries commented as a smile adorned his face. Suddenly, Itachi sensed a strong pain all over his body. The Uchiha looked down and, to his horror, he found Aries' hand a couple of inches away from his, charging a Rasengan. "It's over now," the blonde said before releasing the Rasengan, and sending Itachi flying into the sky. Itachi screaming in pain, something that the Nukenin hadn't done for so many years, as he was sent higher and higher into the sky by the god of war's attack. "I guess, this proves it," the Uchiha thought as gravity started to pull his body back down. "The limit to my power." Hyoga started as he watched the black-haired man hit the ground, with no signs of getting up anytime soon. He got farther than all of us, yet he still didn't stand a chance. None of us ever did. The Cygnus Saint's eyes fall on the other blonde present. "What kind of monster are you?" Aries chuckled at the Bronze Saint's comment. "The kind of monster that will put an end to your pathetic existence," the god of war said as he spun his spear in his hand. The god of war started to make his way towards the Bronze Saints and the three shinobi on the ground. Aries stopped and looked with amusement at the sight in front of him. "Haven't we been through this before, dear sister?" the blonde asked the purple-haired girl that had placed herself between the god of war and the warriors on the floor. "Brother," Athena started. It was obvious that she was having a hard time even speaking in Aries' presence. "I will not let you harm them." The goddess raised her cosmos slightly to emphasize her point. Suddenly, Aries appeared right in front of Athena. My, aren't we brave?" the god of war said as he leaned his head towards his sister and whispered in her ear. "But we all know that you won't be able to do a thing." Aries pressed his cheek against the girl's and wrapped his arms around her figure. "After all," the blonde whispered in her ear once again, "you will always be my little sister." The moment of shock had slightly receded for the girl, and she was, somewhat, able to think clearly. The goddess gathered all the cosmos she could and teleported herself away from her brother. This actions caused a snicker out of the blonde. Suddenly, Aries disappeared from the girl's view. "You're not scared, are you?" the god of war's voice came from beside Saori. Once again the purple-haired goddess found herself unable to move. Aries was standing next to her, and their shoulders were barely touching. Out of desperation Athena tried to teleport herself once more, but again, the blonde had disappeared as well. The girl felt something resting against her back. "You're acting irrationally, sister." The god of war was back to back with the purple-haired girl. Aries could feel his sister tremble behind him. Saori couldn't control her trembling anymore. The mere presence of the blonde next to her was clouding her mind with pure fear. It had failed the last 2 times, but Athena tried to teleport herself away from Aries again. The only thing in the girl's mind was getting away from her brother. Immediately after reappearing, the goddess felt a pair of strong arms embrace her from behind, a chin pressed on her shoulder, and was able to see strands of blonde hair and the glint of a pair of orange eyes. "Is it me that is making you like this, dear sister?" Aries asked as he drew the girl to him a little bit more, pressing her back against his chest, and rubbing his cheek slightly with hers. Athena wasn't even capable of breathing while in her brother's embrace. Aries' aura and cosmos were just too overpowering. The girl gathered all her strength to push herself away from the blonde's arms. Saori started to turn around. It was a desperate attempt, but she couldn't just keep trying to run away from her brother, because pretty soon Aries would get bored and stop playing. Athena knew that this could mean her end, but if she wanted to give her saints a chance of surviving, she would have to take her brother on. A smile formed in Aries' face. He took a step forward. When Saori completely turned around, she saw Aries' hand was less than an inch away from her. The girl's eyes widened as she felt the blonde's cosmos completely consume her. The pressure created by it was too much to bear. Without feeling anything else besides her brother's raw power, the girl's world started to turn to darkness. The god of war caught Saori in his arms as she felt unconscious. "I told you, little sister. You cannot match up to me," Aries commented as another smirk formed on his face. "Saori-san!" Seiya screamed as he struggled to get up. Aries' attention fell back on the group of teenagers in the ground. "You guys are still here?" the blonde asked. "I thought for sure you would have tried to escape by," the god of war trailed off as he looked back. The smirk of confidence in his face was replaced by one of amusement. Surprising every single one of the boy on the floor, Itachi had managed to stand up and was making his way towards the god of war. Both Saint and Shinobi were amazed by the Nukenin's endurance. The blonde's attention went to the Uchiha once again as Itachi drew closer to him. "I don't know if it's genetic," the black-haired man started as something resembling a smile appeared on his face. But an Uchiha always follows where the power is, Itachi commented before bowing slightly to the god of war. The Uchiha's actions shocked Seiya and the others while Aries' smirk deepened. Very well, the blonde responded, simple as the girl in his arms, Itachi, and himself were surrounded by his cosmos. Saori-san! Seiya shouted as he forced his body to stand up and rushed towards the god of war. Aries merely swiped his arm, creating a shockwave that sent the Pegasus Saint flying back. Consider yourselves lucky, the blonde started. I'm giving you one more chance. After you recover from those injuries, come find me, and maybe then you would prove that you're worthy to be among my sister's saints. With a final smirk, Aries disappeared along with Itachi and Saori, as the bronze saints and the shinobi watched helplessly from the ground. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next part.